So wait some few minutes, give me around, then we start together.
Okay.
Yeah, we are going with it. It might be CA. It might be CA. An RB.
Oh, Jesus. Male slave dungeon. Oh.
Alright, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
My name is Thomas Abankwa, and I'm going to be your guide. So if you have any question, comment, or contribution, let me know.
Okay.
But I must say the history in here is very dramatic and emotional. And then the most important aspect is the lesson that we learned from this place. First, we'll have a look inside the male dungeons. We'll talk about these graves. There's a condemned cell we'll see before we move upstairs. Compare some of the rooms used by the Europeans to that of the dungeons. We would end the tour at the door, the gate of no return. We are standing right inside Cape Coast slave dungeons. Others do call this place Cape Coast Castle. And the structure we are seeing here happens to be the third and the smallest that was built by the Europeans when they came to our shores. The coast of West Africa, we do estimate about 60 forts and castles to be built in here. Just that Ghana alone had more than 40 of them, all because of gold. And for that, this area was once named the Gold Coast. Nigeria, Benin, Niger, and a section of Togo had the name Slave Coast, because that was where a lot of the West Africans actually were captured from. So areas like Ivory Coast, Grain Coast, and others had their names based on the resource that the Europeans were getting from the lands. And a lot of these Africans, having moved from Nigeria, Benin, Niger, with the forts and castles down here, should tell us they were walking. And I always do say, just imagine yourself if today you came from Accra, if you were asked to walk from Accra to Cape Coast Castle, the journey, the struggle you'll probably go through before you make it here. But in this time around, these Africans had to walk up beyond the borders of Ghana. A lot of them died, because on their way in here, wild animals attacked some of them, some got drowned in rivers, others also, tiredness, hunger, killed them. But for you to make it to present day Ghana, a lot of these Africans were using the north as their route. So they created resting points. In here, we call them the slave market. So areas like Salaga, Pikoro, Yendi, Tumu from the north, Bonomanso, Atebubu, Kintampo, Kumasi in the middle belt before they moved them to the coast. But then bringing them into the castles, they had their last rest at a place called Asin Manso, which happens to be a slave market as well. Over there happens to be a river, and that is where the captives are to be given their last. But as Africans, they shave their beards and hair so they get to look younger before shea butter will be applied on their skin. The purpose of the shea butter was to heal their wounds and also make them look attractive before they bring them in here. Once you get to this castle, first they will move you upstairs to the second floor, which happens to be the Palaver Hall. And over there, nurses, doctors are to examine them to know the strength of the captives. Please, you get a bit closer. All right, you're welcome. You've not missed anything yet. You're about starting the tour. All right, so I was saying that this happens to be Cape Coast Castle, the third and the smallest castle that was built by the Europeans when they came to our shores. And our focus is on the transatlantic slave trade. Question, comments are allowed. And within this castle, when the slaves do get in here, first they move them to the Palaver Hall, and over there, nurses, doctors would have them examined to know their strength as to whether they fit as domestic captives or commercial captives. The domestic ones are those to work in here, and the commercial ones are those to be exported before they start to auction or to sell them. And up there, humans were exchanged for goods like gunpowder, mirror, alcoholics, fabrics, leatherwork, ceramics, metallic objects like bangles, beads, tobacco, sugar, and other things you might have heard they were using for the exchange. Right after the exchange is done, all captives are brought to the forecourt for branding, and that was where they would set fire, place in metals that had their embossed designs underneath them. When the metal is red hot, from the fire into an oil as a male directly to your chest, your shoulder, or your back. But as a female, the shoulder, the back, or arm. Some preferred piercing captives with tags, and others were given metals like anklets just for easy identification. They separate the males from female. All the males are moving this way, the females also into a separate chamber to await their ship. But then get to know, once you are within this castle, you are going to work. So the structure that we are seeing here, we mostly do credit it to the English, but then get to know the labor work happens to be the enslaved Africans. I made mention they built a lot of fort and castles here, but then out of the numbers, only 3 were castles, of which the first ever European structure to be built on our land happens to be the St. George's Castle. Popularly today we call it the Elmina Castle, which was built by the Portuguese around 1482. The second one happens to be the Christianborg, or the Osu Castle, which was built by the Danish around 1661. And the last is where we all find ourselves today, Cape Coast Castle, also built by the English around 1664. And out of these 3 structures, Cape Coast happens to be the only castle that was built purposely for the transatlantic slave trade. One probably would ask what even brought about this whole trade itself. Around the 1400s was when Europeans started coming to Africa, and historically we were told that they were in as missionaries, as explorers, merchants, and others. But I always do say 2 major factors that brought the Europeans to our land. The first aspect in here happens to be gold, and the second aspect as well being humans, all because before the Europeans came to Africa, there were once Arabs in here that stayed within the north and the east of Africa. Once they get humans, they get natural resources, they supply some to the Europeans. So historically, if you have to check areas like Cyprus, Spain, Portugal, they had Africans that were actually working over there. But at the point, the Europeans wanted to break the monopoly that the Arabs enjoyed in here. So if they had taken the north and the east, equally they could also take the west, the center, and the south of Africa. But then West Africa became the focus, all because they got to know a lot of the resources that these Arabs supplied to them neither came from the north or the east of Africa, rather the west. And they supported their fact with the pilgrimage that Mansa Musa had around 1324, which brought the Portuguese here. The Portuguese stayed, monopolized the business for some time, until the 1500s when they were seeking routes to India, or let me say Asia, to trade, where they got to the Americas, started plantations like sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, and others in large scale. Earlier, they were using natives from those lands to work on the plantations, but then due to the hardship, they were dying. Aside that, being introduced to disease like measles, influenza, and others would kill them. They had this Catholic missionary, the name Bartholomew de las Casas, who was like, why don't they ship the demand to Africa? Because these Africans actually proved to be strong. The African system can withstand both tropical disease as well as the European diseases. Naturally, Africans are into farming. If you want someone that would probably best fit the job out there, he thinks the Africans should be the best candidates, of which the then Pope, that was by name Pope Nicholas V, as well had the papal sign or the decree sign, saying once they get to Africa, any African that was not a Christian could be enslaved. And get to know those days, these Africans knew nothing about Christianity, and that started the whole system. In here, they had different ways that they could get the captives. And one of the options happens to be the Europeans themselves earlier to actually raid, kidnap communities. Some of the Africans got convinced that if they were to join them into the new world, they were to be given better lives. But then a lot of them brought in here happens to be as a result of tribal wars here in Africa. When the Europeans came in here, they got to know that the Africans also practiced slavery. So the easiest way they could get our people was to use the African system. But then get to know this, the Africans practice slavery and not slave trade. In the olden days, we would fight ourselves, and once I defeat you, I fuse you into my system to grow. So a very small village community you see today, tomorrow, could grow into, let's say, a state. The more they go to conquer other states, let's say kingdoms, and kingdoms could grow into empire. But then within the African system, a slave today, tomorrow could be a free person if you were to prove yourself right. Some servants could work hard to pay off their debt. Some, due to how hardworking they were, their masters could give them lands to start their own system, and others, even at a point, could rise from being a slave to become a royal. And a typical example, here in Ghana, we use their Kwamu and their Ashantis as reference. They were known for war, so if I see this man or him to be strong, the focus is once I make them chiefs, with their strategies, they can help us to expand our territories, and through that, they got their freedom. So knowing this, it made it easier for the Europeans, because this group that we see here happens to be divisions that came together. So then we also fuse ourselves into the divisions. So probably, let's say this lady came from England and from the Netherlands, and he's from Denmark. Once we come in here, we would associate ourselves with the tribes in here, entice you with weapons. Just as you used to fight yourself, the system wouldn't change. But then this time, if this tribe here defeats any of them, they would have to supply me with captives. The same way the tribes in here would supply her, and as well this tribe to him. So at the point, we wouldn't go out again hunting you. Weapons given to you would entice you to fight yourself, and once you get the enemies were brought in here. But then get to know the system wouldn't end in Africa, because after all this, they moved them to the New World. Plantation owners would also have them exchange with sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, rice, and others. They move the raw materials to Europe. In Europe, they get them transformed into finished goods, and all these goods are moving back here for the system to start all over again, and that gave us the triangular trade or the transatlantic slave trade. Europe as the origin, Africa the Middle Passage, the Americas, the Caribbean, that took almost 300 to 400 years to end. So basically that is the system. If you have any question, comment, you let me know, quick one before we have a look at this plan. If not long ago I made mention some of the chiefs in here supplied some of their captives to the Europeans. Others also gave them lands to settle. So it means Africans had a role in the trade. For that, the chiefs in Ghana admitted the fact and brought this plaque to say they are sorry for their ancestors' involvement in the trade. And this plaque here should always remind we the living never to forget what happened in the past so we don't repeat the same mistake again. It reads, in the everlasting memory of the anguish of our ancestors, may those who died rest in peace. May those who return find their roots, and may humanity never again perpetrate such injustice against humanity. And they ended, we, the living, vow to uphold this. The living happens to be myself and we all here. Yeah. If I see myself deemed not to be enslaved, so do you all deserve the same right. For that they brought this. And over there to Barack Obama, and the wife also came here 2009. Right after their tour, they unveiled the plan to see. So if there is no question, we are moving straight into the dungeon. Please get to watch your steps here. And this is a bit slippery. Please, you join me.
Francis, oh, Jesus. I need the courage to go through. Yes.
You good? And please, you can take off your sunglasses too. It is a bit dark in here.
We're now going through the male slavery castle where the slaves were brought in, and so we're going here. This is where they were brought through.
We're going to the dungeon.
So we're going into the dungeon where they were brought. This is the dungeon here. This is the dungeon here where they were brought through to this area here. They barely have any proper hair coming through, just barely a little hole at the top. As you can see, just few little holes. Wow. So what is this? Oh my God. Ah?
The Africans those days had no lights. So once they bring them in here, they expect those poles that you see up there.
Oh my God.
Lights, and also serve as their source of.
So there was no light in this place. Oh my God.
You could stay in minimum a day, maximum almost over 3 months.
Jesus.
But 3 months or even more.
Without going outside?
You would go outside.
Okay.
You can't stay in here any more than a week, you die. So they take them out to work. Like I said, they use the slaves to build the castle and do other hard work. So when they had nothing to do, that was when they had to stay in here.
Jesus.
We do have, pardon me? Don't worry, I'll talk about all of them. We stand inside the male dungeons, which is actually having 5 chambers. The first, second, third, fourth, straight to the fifth one over there.
Okay.
And by the estimate we have in here, if they are to fill these 5 chambers with captives, it can hold about 700 to 1,000 each. which is to say just this room we stand in can pick over 150 of the captives. But then due to the factors that help them to get the captives, you tell us they wouldn't always have this place filled with the humans. Sometimes a place can even take less than 50. But then because of the conditions they had in here too, not all of them will also make it out of this point. Once they bring them here, they expect these captives to defecate in here, urinate in here, sleep in the same condition, will do everything until the ship will come and get them from this place. Once you die in the dungeons, get to know there wouldn't be any befitting burial for you.
Oh, Jesus.
Bodies will be loaded in sacks. They are cannonballs to give it weight and will dump all these bodies into the sea. So the ocean we have to see out there happens to be mass burial for a lot of the Africans that died in here. If you are to look on the floor, you'll probably get to see some trenches or drainage system in here.
That's where the blood and the
these
urine.
were made as passage, expecting the waste in here to move straight into the sea. But then you would ask yourself, how often will it rain? And even if it does rain, there wouldn't be enough water for them to move. So the domestic captives in the castle were those assigned to clean the place, and they were not doing that on a regular basis. Before they actually come in to clean the place, some of them might have stepped on the poop and other stuff, making them stuck on the floor. So what they could get from this place, they do so. The rest, they had to cover them with sand to reduce the stink in here. And that system started creating layers in the dungeon. In the year 1974, the same year this castle was opened to the general public as a tourist site, we had some group of archaeologists from the University of Ghana, which was led by the late Professor Akwanda. They had this room excavated, and that was when they discovered the bricks as the original floor of the dungeons. So they took samples of what they got from this place to their lab, had them tested, and the results that came out of which at least 1, 2, and 3, just the 3, first 3, please come this way. The first 3, yes. That's good. So the result that came out says the little portion that they left here, as well as everything we work on from the second to the feed chamber, happens to be the toilet, the vomit, the sweat, the blood, the food particles, things that humans do excrete just from their system, mixed with sand and food is what you are seeing here. And they left this place unexcavated just to serve as a pool. So if any of us don't believe, we get samples from any of the chambers to test whether these are human waste or not. The condition I'm talking of in here, as I made mention earlier, you could stay in minimum being just a day, but the maximum you have to estimate almost over 3 months. Because until the ship was ready, you probably wouldn't leave this in. If you are lucky to meet the ship today, that means you are moving on. But if unfortunately the ship leaves today, get to know the ship is now either moving to the Caribbean or the Americas, you would have to go to Europe before it comes in here. So if you meet up with them, fine, you join them. When you die, your body moving straight into the sea. Out of the 5 chambers that they had here, only the first one had a gate. All because those that were kept in this room were seen to be the aggressive ones. And these aggressive ones were mostly kept in chains, making sure they wouldn't fight the officers when they were in to inspect or bring in food. Talking about food too, they were fed mostly twice in a day. As well, food was mostly served outside. Because once you are in the dungeons, you are going to work. So when working, they fed them there. But then when they had food was also brought in the dungeons for them to feed themselves. And get to know in the dungeons, you will probably become the survivor of the fittest. The more stronger you were, you probably would get more. If you were that weak, it means you also have to starve in here, and starvation would kill some of them. So out of the sickness in terms of cholera, malaria, fever, and other that was spread in here, some also died because of starvation or hunger. The male slave dungeon. Question, comment, if we have any, let me know. If not, please, we have them on this one. Alright, so the first chamber I made mention was excavated, but from the second to the feet, nothing had been done to it. But But then if you are to look here, we'll probably get to see some bricks telling us that if we get to excavate this whole area, there should be bricks filling the whole space. So whatever that we stand on happens to be the waste they left in here. But then my focus is not even the bricks. I just want us to see how thick the waste is from the brick down here coming up to this point. So if today, over 100 years, we could have waste as thick as we are seeing here, just imagine the captives staying here, how high the waste probably would have been. This time, they stayed in for days, weeks, till ships would probably come pick them from this point. You join me for this one. So please, we could spread in, some will go this way. Okay. Alright, this happens to be the last chamber, and this place was also for the selection of the captives. Due to the condition in the dungeons, not all of them were that fit to journey with them. So when the ships were ready, those that were seen extremely weak were kept over there, and the rest in chains had to walk through a tunnel that connects this place to the door or the gate of no return. So you would walk in that way, but then have to use the tunnel. It's unfortunate we are not going through this tunnel today, because in the year 1834, Captain George McLean, who used to be the president of the United, was asked to block the tunnel, symbolizing the English ending their trade here. But then practically, humans were still being smuggled until 1860s, they finally ended the trade. Having an entrance here should tell us this was not part of the dungeon system, because if they had an entrance, this probably wouldn't be there to block them. But then before the land was given to the Europeans to trade, the natives of the town would come to this land to worship a shrine they call Nana Tabe, which happens to be the stone. But then giving the land out means you can't come to the exact place to worship. So they left here with 2 sections of their stone to the town to worship. The castle we are seeing here was officially given to Ghanaians in 1960, when Ghana became a Republican country. Then 1973, the stones were brought back. So today, those that believe in this system do come in here to worship. That is why we see things they use for their prayers. The stools they sit on when they are in for consultation or prayers also over there. If you are to look at this point, you would see a lot of wreath and flowers. And these wreath flowers were brought in by visitors like yourself. I made mention if you die in the dungeons, they do dump the body into the sea. But for us here, we believe that their souls are still in the castle. So when visitors bring them, we prefer not to litter the sea, rather to keep them in areas like this, to honor, to respect, and to remember the dead. So once you see them anywhere in the castle, we serve the same purpose. For that, we have this. Question, comment, if you have any, you let me know. If not, let's have a look at the term.
What's the other side?
That's why I said they kept the weaker ones, those that were like that would probably die in less a day or 2. So when the strong ones leave, yeah, you can have a look. When the strong ones leave, they bring them back to here, they just join the next one. Is that there?
It's small. Small, yeah. It is small.
You spoke about 5 children, right? You said 1, 2, 3, 4, okay.
5.
Alright, so right above this dungeon happens to be a church. The name of the church was Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, SPG. Today we call it the Anglican Church or Church of England. And we paused here all because of the hole we are seeing there. Before you move in and out of the church, you would witness everything that was happening down here. So whilst others were worshiping their maker above them, others also stayed down here and struggled. And within this castle alone, they had 2 churches operating. Aside the Anglican Church, they had the Western Methodist and the forecourt. If you are to visit the Elmina Castle today, you will witness the Portuguese having the Catholic Church right above their slave markets. The Dutch took over the Elmina Castle, and because they formed part of the Protestant, they didn't want to use the Catholic Church. So they built their own church, and it was right above the female dungeons. You visit Kosu today, you see the Presbyterian Church above, another section, and as well, if you came from Accra, I'm sure you saw Fort Amsterdam. Amsterdam also have a church right above the male dungeons because the Dutch Protestant church. So these same areas, they were keeping the captives the same place, they spread the gospel. By the point, the church above us became a classroom. But the classroom was not designed for purely Africans, neither purely Europeans. It was only made for the mixed race. The kids that they had with the blacks were those brought up there to be educated. And some of these kids moving in and out of the church also got brainwashed, became slave merchants in here. And historically, they do say the aspect of the mixed race were even worse. They were born and raised within the same castle where the trade was taking place. So just imagine if you were born and raised in here, how you also get to relate with the system. Everything still human waste. Please, we go outside.
Hey, Jesus. Oh my God. I'm telling you.
Yes, so that is the church. 3 windows.
So that's the church. Okay.
Pardon me?
You'll go to see the church?
Yeah, we would have a look at the gate, but they're not in there because now it's the library. The librarian is going to run. Alright, so this section of the castle used to be a graveyard for the Europeans. In the year 1996, they had this place excavated. They left only 4 of them because they were the only ones that had inscriptions as to the person buried underneath. And out of the 4 graves, the one separated happens to be the only African that was buried amongst the Europeans. The name, Philip Kwaku. Originally, he is Kwiku Ejiri from this town. The father happens to be one of the middlemen that supplied the Europeans with captives. So the role of the father got him a scholarship. Kwiku was taken from this place to England when he was 11. He got to England, they baptized him into the Anglican faith. That was where they gave him the name Philip. And his original name Kwiku also got anglicized to Kwaku, and that made him Philip Kwaku. Age 24, he became the first black man to be ordained as an Anglican priest after he completed Oxford University as a theologist. And the following year, he was brought back to his own land. So right up there, he was serving as a missionary, an interpreter, and a head teacher, whilst others also stayed right beneath him. And he served this castle for 50 good years before he died. Personally, I know nothing that he did for or against the trade, because one man up there can't dictate what should be done, and get to know the same system in here got him that scholarship. At the point, treatment for Philip in the castle was very poor. They were not even paying a salary. So he left the castle to the town so he could commerce to feed himself. So he actually shifted from focusing on the church work to actually commerce. And through that, he taught the natives how to read and write the English language. So here in Ghana, we attribute the Western education to him. That is why the first basic school that was built, then Gold Coast era, has been named after him as Philip Kwaku Boys, which is right here in Cape Coast. Age 75, 1816. He died. The English themselves buried him right here. The first one closer is by name C.B. Whitehead. And Whitehead, we actually don't know what killed him. Some are saying the Asantes killed him. Others do say it was the Dutch. And some do say malaria killed him at the age of 38. Around 1812, he died. The middle is a lady, Letitia Elizabeth London. And this English woman came in to visit the husband, George MacLean. Got in here barely 2 months. She was found dead in the husband's room. When she died, rumors spread she poisoned herself. All because she got to know the husband was having an African mistress. So out of frustration, they do say she poisoned herself. Some are saying the African mistress rather wanted to take MacLean for herself, so she rather, with the help of George MacLean, poisoned the lady. And some are saying malaria killed her. When she was 36, she also died 1838. The last one there is George McLean. And McLean is very popular in our history. If you remember down there, I said he blocked the tunnel connecting the chamber. As well, this same man here introduced us to the first Western courts. So in terms of common law here in Ghana, I started right up there. And through that, he designed a very popular treaty we call the Bond of 1844. And that same bond laid foundation for our colonization. Age 46, malaria confirmed also killed McLean. So McLean 46, the wife 36, the soldier 38, and the priest 75. If you noticed, almost all the three attributed malaria as the cause of death. That was because staying here, they have not found a cure for malaria. So those days, once they die, either malaria, yellow fever, and other tropical diseases were attributed to the cause of death. That was why the West Coast itself had the name White Man's Grave, due to the tropical disease that we had here. So if there is no question, we have a look at the church.
What was the bond about?
Pardon me?
The bond.
All right, so the bond was more of, I'll probably have to repeat it if you don't mind when we get to talk about it. All right, so please, let's go this way. Because we go to... All right, so that is the entrance to the church. And if you do remember, I made mention before you would walk in and move out of the church, you would witness everything that was happening in the dungeons. So that is the hole we saw at the third chamber. So walking in and out, everything going down there. You also get to hear. This same place I made mention became a classroom. But it was not for purely Africans, neither purely Europeans. Only the mixed race were those that were brought in here to be educated. Today, the school or the church operates as a library, as you can all see, children's library. Just that the librarian has taken some days off, so we wouldn't probably go to town. And it's more of religious books and story books for kids. That is what we have. So if there is any question, you can let me know. If not, we have a look at where the background is staying. Watch this.
So let's make it.
Yes, dear, how are you?
Most days. Oh. My knee. My knees. Oh my God, my knees. All right, so please be coming here. We stand right inside the governor's reception area. And in here, he will receive visitors. They do their drinking, would entertain them in this room. And the other room where the man stands happens to be his personal office. So once they appoint you as the governor, that will be your office, and this place will be your reception area. The floors that we stand on here are not original. These are all restored woods from Ghana. We call them odun. But if you are to cross, everything you walk on till you get to the governor's room, still original. We call them pitch pine wood from Europe.
very strong woods, to have a feel of the restored ones and also have a feel of the new ones. Have a feel of the old ones and tell me which one is strong. Please, you come this way.
Stronger. Yeah. These are stronger. That's all. It's very strong. He's going upstairs. These are strong. Goodness. Very strong. Oh my God. They're very strong. Stronger. Mighty God. Original woods from way back, from the days of
Alright, so we stand right inside the governor's living room. We've all been to the male dungeons and we saw the condition down there. So up here, what we do is to compare the governor's room to where the captives also stay. The type of vents that they had down there, turn off the light, we also how dark the place was. But in here, we are all feeling the breeze. You can see how bright the place is without any artificial problem here. And the space all in here was used by one person, whilst about 700 to 1,000 humans were staying down here. Aside this, as the living room, we have this bedroom in here. So please, let's see the bedroom.
Very God. Big, beautiful bedroom, huh? Wow.
Alright, so the bedroom of the governor is also having 5 windows. The living room is having 9. His corridor having 2. So 2 plus 5 and the 9 all over is having 16 windows. Whilst 1,000 humans were having those smaller vents we saw down there. There are 9 in the dungeons. And if you are to compare the events, you will see that what we saw in the dungeons looks similar to what we are seeing here. And the dungeons are made much, they are just 9. This is just half of a window, which is having 6. That means a complete window should have 12. So one window alone is even more than what the captives had down there. So if you multiply 12 by 16, you are getting 192 for one person, whilst 1,000 humans were sharing just 9. And that should give us the big difference between where the governor stayed and where the captives also stayed. If there is no question, let's see the courtroom. Moving out of his bedroom, on your right, you see the governor's wardrobe or closet. Please, you come this way. That's the closet.
That's the closet, okay.
All right, so this part of the castle used to be the barracks for the European soldiers. The soldiers stayed down there, used the middle part as their canteen. George McLean, I made mention, introduced us to the Western Court, which is the room that you just came from. And at a point, the soldiers left this area. They converted this place to a prison for the Africans until the year 1992. That is about 32 years ago. The prison also moved to Ankafu, and today, as you can all see, the place being a craft shop. So it was first a garrison, it became a prison, and today a craft shop. The middle part, that was once the canteen for the soldiers. Today, it happens to be a coffee shop over there. You know, the business here was very profitable. And talking about the business, I mean two things. That is the gold business as well as the human trade. So when you get a place and you don't protect your end, others were willing to fight you and take over the land. So this castle we are seeing here, I made mention was built by the English, but then the land itself had been used by 4 different Europeans before the English came in here. You know, the Portuguese happens to be the first settlers on our land. They had the Elmina Castle built somewhere 1482. But at the point, they saw the need to expand their post. So a section of the Portuguese merchants came to this land. Because they already had the Elmina Castle, there was no need to waste resources to build a new one here. So over here, they just built a timber lodge and stayed in for almost 100 years until the Dutch had defeated them at Elmina. So the Portuguese left the Elmina and had to abandon this place. The Swedish took over this land, and the Swedish built a fort here, stayed in the fort for about 4 to 5 years. From nowhere, the Danish came in, fought the Swedish. The Danish used the same fort for about 3 years. The Dutch also came in, fought the Danish, stayed in another 3 years. English came in, took up the fort, built by the Swedish, erected this castle, and stayed here for 296 years. When the English came, they knew enemies would come fight them, so they were fully prepared to protect their gains. So they brought the weapons which surrounded the castle, the cannons. And aside these cannons, they built 2 forts to serve as watchtower. So when you look up on the hill, you can see the white building with a red cap over the fort.
Yes.
It is called Fort William. And there's one also behind this church, also called Victoria, but we can't see it. So Victoria and William served as watchtower. Soldiers up there, when they see intruders from the sea or the land, they signal those in here in the morning with the use of flags. Afternoon, they use mirrors, and evening either will use Morse codes for signals or torches, telling them that enemies are coming. So the soldiers would move from where they stayed, surround the cannons, put in gunpowder, cannonball at the mouth, lights their mast, and boom, balls into the enemy ship. Water goes in there, it would sink into the sea. And for that, the English stayed here for the longest period. Out of the 296 years, 183 years was solely for slave trade, and 113 years also for colonization on the sea. Now, please, we have a look at it. Yes?
Why are the cannons facing this way and a direction that is not?
All right, so in the olden days, we believe we were fighting with shields. So with the shield, probably the cannonballs can break them so that they can hide in between there and shoot enemies with the guns. Because you wouldn't take any chances.
So the ones were not living there?
Pardon?
People were not living
They were living there, but they were not as many as we see today. Those days, it would be few, and they wouldn't be as close as we are seeing now. Get a bit far from the borders. Yeah.
Okay.
Settlement was not close.
You said the prison was closed 1992, right?
Yes, 92.
So it was run by the Ghanaian government after
Yeah, after independence, it was run by. So it's not just this castle. You moved to Jamestown.
Yes.
That place was also a prison. Anamabo was a prison, and some other forts. It was into no use, so they had to convert them into prisons.
And
Defend
that
themselves.
makes sense because it's the same infrastructure as these, like even holding prisoners,
prisoners.
having them go in the yard. have
So the
sunlight.
Europeans converted it to prisons, and we kept using it for some time until later we stopped.
Okay.
Please, we go this way. We are
Courtroom. Oh, that.
Yes.
mentioned that this was a prison until 1992,
Yes.
right? You also said that the tourist site opened in 1974.
74, yes.
So there was overlap between
Yes, so,
prisoners and tourism?
You see, there's now something blocking the art market from this place.
Yeah.
So earlier they had nothing like that.
So where was the tourism taking place?
The tourism aspect will be here, just as you are here.
In
Yeah.
such close proximity to
Most
the
definitely.
prisoners?
And the prisoners were here. So they had a gate there.
Okay.
Because I remember even somewhere 1980s there, they were even having programs in this castle, like Akan drama and those stage plays in here, but there's still the prison was not.
What was the capacity of prisoners?
I am tired. I'm so very tired. And it makes it even worse because we're not used to it.
So where you see the moving out, so they move out, when they're moving out, you get to the shop, look out and you see it. So they had the gates blocking the prisoners from those rooms. So the activities here will be progressing. Yeah, there was because even the prison I think was just 10 years ago. This place was
I really did all Fore Parents, so help the Lord.
and it became a water place in 1979.
No, you can't give them chance, and that's what they're bringing back the Lebanese, they're bringing back the Asian, the Chinese, everything. These are European people. When they come here, they're going to destroy. They're going to try. But if they try this time, it's not going to be easy. It's not like before.
You went to a winner. Then I'm not sure you use that place because it's either when you're coming from Platform, if you branch, if you branch this way, you're going to that place. But if you don't branch, you go straight. Then you wouldn't use that. Alright, so we stand inside the first place that the captive will probably get auctioned, as I made mention earlier. So when you get to the castle, in here, nurses, doctors will have them examined to know their strength as to whether they were fit as domestic or commercial captives. Then they march them forward over there. So the merchants over there will also have them exchanged according to their physique and their strength. That was where they gave some gunpowder, mirror, alcoholics, and others before they moved them downstairs for the branding. And the branding is where they put in metals and fire. When they are red, what they move it into your body just to know whether you were registered by this group or by the other group. This same place we stand is where some 8 frantic chiefs also met with Commander Hill to sign the bond of 1854, the same bond that laid foundation to our organization. And I remember you asked about the bond. You know, before George McLean came in here, the English had one governor, and his name was Sir Charles McCarthy. And McCarthy actually had this war with the Asantes, and he was killed. Okay, so when he was killed, the English lost interest in this castle and other as well as English. So they actually left, and they left. Was left with just a few of them. So they brought in George McLean not as the governor, but rather as the president of the merchants. So when he came in here, he brought a system where, you know, in the olden days, our system was such that if an elderly and let's say a king gets an issue, the elderly was always right. If a female and a male gets an issue, the male was always right. If a slave and the master gets an issue, the master was always right. So when McLean came in, they were keeping captives in the dungeons, but he brought a system that when the people actually have issues, they could bring it to this castle. So when you enter the castle, whether a slave, a master, a girl, a boy, husband or wife, equality before the law. So actually some of the names saw that it was prudent for them to bring their issues in here, because once they bring it in here, they are going to get fair hearing. But then at that same point, humans were still being kept in there. So then when the English saw that now, the people are started getting interest in the European system, now they brought in a new person with the name Commander Hill. So when Commander Hill came, he was like, how come these people can bring in their things, but we don't have any legal binding between them? So for that, there should be an agreement that we will also get to control their land. But the focus for them coming here was to get the resources. So when he came, with the influence of Commander Hill, George McLean designed the bond. And the bond was 1, the people in here should change their cultural practices. 2, they should allow them to control the land. So their laws would govern the land, but the owners of the chiefs will still claim their lands. And lastly, they can also use their weapons to protect them from the Asantes. So that was the bond about it. So it was signed exactly on the 6th of March 1844. The agreement was that exactly 100 years, we give back everything. 100 years later, the English said they want to they stayed in for extra 13 years. That was why when our first president came to Kwame, he was fighting for self-government now, and exactly the same date, 6th of March, 1957, Ghana got independence. After independence, the English said they want to leave. So they stayed for extra 3 years, 4 months. That was when Ghana became a republican country. It's 1st July, 1960. And today, or this year, it is 67 years after independence and also 64 years becoming a republican. Yes, please.
Oh God, I'm tired. I don't know if I can continue with. I don't know if I can continue with the rest of the journey. I am so drained.
We have Unikas, where there happens to be a museum, was a post office. They had post office here. So the seat of government was moved to Accra, 1877. From 1877, no government stayed. 1877, that was when they moved from the So Cape Coast was the capital city of Gold Coast until they moved to Accra. When Ghana became independent, it was still a capital city. So the only thing they were doing here, the prison, and other systems. So in terms of Ghana here, almost all the first have outside the Cape Coast. So the first post office, first custom office, first whatever was actually being run in this because first school and everything was rising. But in terms of people came schools, it was the winner. But the first school to go in the town is Cape Coast. So please, if there's no question, would you like? Yes, please.
The other side?
That was their conference room.
Oh, the conference room.
Yes.
That's one.
Yes, please. Now the conference room is the other one. Over one. It is just a gap between the conference room and the space. Any questions, please? If there's none, let's see the content cell.
God, this is a lot. Matilda. I'm tired. Oh.
Some were still coming from the stadium. No, 4 months before officially left. So that was requested. And I always say, this aspect too, there should always be an insider. For someone to get it from outside, that means there should be someone in there who's also willing to accept their proceeds. All right, so we stand right in front of a condemned cell. You know, a lot of the Africans that were brought in here were warriors from their tribes. So when they brought them out to work, some of them would want to fight the officers, others as well would want to escape from this place. Doing that, you were seen to be rebellious, and for that, the rebellious ones had to be killed to serve as a deterrent for others in here not to repeat the same thing. But in here, they wouldn't shoot them dead, rather in the presence of others, they had them beaten out here before they moved them into the cell. They blocked 3 doors behind them. No food, no water, no air, and no light. So you get dehydrated, you suffocate, and then you die in there. But then the sad aspect is, let's say we are about 5 or 10 or less sent in there. Until the last person in there dies, nobody leave that place. So if you were that strong to withstand the condition for let's say a day or two, you had to endure the stage of the dead ones. Once they are all dead, bodies are laid on the floor. They bring out the males, is what happened to others, so that next time, if you are also to repeat the same thing, remembering what you saw on the floor will deter you from trying to escape or fight the officers. Then the bodies will move straight into the sea. So we are moving in to have a feel of the place. Please get to watch your head coming in. Yes?
Will this be like similar to like solitary confinement and the
Same.
modern day classrooms?
Most definitely. Same. And in here, you will see a space having, all because this section 2 was a cell for the European soldiers. Those that were into drinking, going to the town to do things they were not actually allowed to do. When they come, they were kept in here for some days. After you served your punishment, you would go back to your normal duties. As an African, you move to the other point that had 2 extra doors, no food, no water. So moving in, please, get to watch your head. The only original door that we still have in this castle. So any other door, window you've been seeing have all been restored. The last door we have now. Please, join me inside.
I don't know if I want to go in there. I'm sorry. I can't manage. I don't think I can handle it. I can't handle it. It's really bad. It's just, it's a lot.
Yes. This is, nothing can happen to this stuff. Watch out, please.